Chapter 1. The Echo of an Arrow. My eyes flew open. For a heart-stopping moment, the phantom agony of an arrow piercing my chest was all I knew, a cold, sharp finality that had stolen my breath. But then a different sensation, a suffocating, unnatural heat, surged from my core, licking at my veins like liquid fire. I was alive, and I was back. I scrambled for the dressing table, my hands trembling. Pulling a silver hairpin from the lacquered box, I didn't hesitate. I drove the sharp point deep into my thigh. White-hot pain sliced through the drug-induced haze, a brutal but welcome anchor to this second chance. Clarity, however fleeting, was a weapon. Shoving open the heavy rosewood window, I clambered out into the humid night air. The damp moss of the western courtyard felt slick and cool beneath my thin slippers as I slipped around the side of the building. And there she was, just as I remembered. Priya, my brother's personal maid, a shadow hiding behind a stone pillar, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight as she watched my chamber door. A discarded vase, heavy and ceramic, felt solid in my grasp. I moved like a ghost, the sound of my approach swallowed by the chirping of crickets. One swift, decisive blow, and she slumped to the ground without a sound. The air in my chamber was thick with the cloying scent of the drug. I worked quickly, dragging her limp body inside, the rough fabric of her robes scratching against my skin as I stripped them from her and pulled them onto my own shaking frame. From my brother's effects, I retrieved the jade pendant he never removed, the one carved with his personal seal, and tucked it deep into the bodice of Priya's dress, now worn by the unconscious maid. "Brother," I thought, a bitter smile twisting my lips, "enjoy the grand gift your little sister has prepared for you." In my first life, my own flesh and blood, Ronan Zhang, had served me to his dearest friend, Lorian Song, like a sacrificial lamb. He had drugged me, led me to that bed, and watched as my life unraveled. Lorian was forced to marry the woman he believed had schemed her way into his life, and his eyes held nothing but contempt for me. The woman he truly loved, the delicate Lyra Lynn, became my sister-in-law, a constant, painful reminder of my failure. I had been so naive then, believing that devotion could eventually carve a space in a heart already occupied. But in the second year of our miserable marriage, Lyra died of what the physicians called melancholy. Within 6 months, as if a curse had been unleashed, the entire house of Zhang was slaughtered, our banners burned to ash. Lorian, in the midst of his grief and newfound success, turned to me with a gentleness that felt like a trap. I, a fool drowning in loneliness, thought he had finally seen me. Until he drew his bow, aimed, and let the arrow fly. It had pierced my heart, a final, brutal lesson. Now, waking again, I had returned to the precipice, to the very moment before the tragedy began. This time, there would be no naive hope. There would only be vengeance. Chapter 2. When Golden Wind Meets Jade Dew. I scaled the crumbling courtyard wall, my borrowed maid's robes catching on the stones. My destination had been the city's discreet male brothel, a place of quiet transactions, but in my disoriented state, I stumbled into Silverwood City's largest and most lavish pleasure house, the Whispering Willow Pavilion. Lanterns glowed like captured fireflies, casting a warm, honeyed light on the polished floors and silk-clad figures within. "Miss, you seem to have lost your way." A voice, lazy and laced with amusement, drifted down from above. I looked up into a pair of smiling, almond-shaped eyes that seemed to dance with mischief. He was the most notorious playboy in all of Silverwood, Jake Qin. In my past life, I had despised him, seeing him as the epitome of dishonorable indulgence. But now, in the soft lantern light, with his crimson robes and the confident arch of his brow, he looked impossibly handsome. He was a beautiful, dangerous flame. "You," I breathed, the drug still coiling in my gut, You are exactly who I was looking for. I closed the distance between us, grabbing the fine silk of his collar and pulling his face down for mine. I kissed him. It was a desperate, feverish act, a drowning woman clinging to a raft. For a moment, he was still, surprised. Then his lips curved against mine, and he responded with an expert warmth that stole the breath from my lungs. When golden wind meets jade dew, the poets wrote, one encounter surpasses countless worldly moments. Before the first hints of dawn painted the sky in shades of pearl and rose, I fled, gathering my disheveled robes. I moved like a thief in the night, leaving the scent of wine and pine behind me. I didn't know, in my haste, that one of my crabapple blossom earrings, a small, intricate piece of silver and pearl, had slipped from my ear and lay gleaming on the silken sheets of his bed. When I climbed back over the wall, the morning dew clung to the grass, and the damp footprints I left on the moss of the western courtyard vanished as the sun began its ascent. I pushed open my chamber door to find my personal maid, Karis, her eyes swollen and red from a night of frantic, silent searching. "Miss, where were you?" she whispered, her voice cracking with relief and fear. Looking at her young, loyal face, my heart clenched. I saw a ghost, the ghost of Karis in my past life, stepping forward to take the blame for a miscarriage a concubine had falsely accused me of. Lorien hadn't even listened to my defense. He had sentenced me and Karis with a single, cold glance. Her last words to me, through tears that mirrored the ones on her face now, were, "Miss, live well. Leave the Song residence." "Karis," I said, my voice softer than I intended. I reached out and wiped a tear from her cheek, the warmth of her skin a startling contrast to the cold memories. "Karis," I said. The little maid froze, her eyes wide with shock. "Help me remove my makeup," I said, changing the subject with a feigned yawn. "That brute Jake Qin insisted on arguing about who should be on top all night. I'm sore and exhausted." Karis's head snapped down, a blush creeping up her neck. She shook her head. "This servant didn't dare make it known you were gone. I only searched quietly, alone." Her gaze flickered to the faint red marks on my neck before she tactfully looked away. What is it?" I asked, touching my neck. "Miss," she said softly, "you're missing one of your earrings." I waved a dismissive hand. Perhaps it fell somewhere. As the hot water of the bath cascaded over my skin, I let out a soft hiss. Who would have thought that wastrel Jake Qin would have such a physique? What a terrible, wonderful waste. Chapter 3. The Grand Show. As the morning hour struck, a commotion erupted from the northern courtyard. I, however, was in no hurry. I sat before my bronze mirror, carefully, meticulously drawing my eyebrows. "Miss, the North Garden!" Karis rushed in, her face pale with anxiety. I lazily set down the eyebrow pencil. My fingertips brushed against the red mark hidden beneath my silk scarf. "There is no need to hurry," I said, my voice calm. "Let the fire burn a little brighter." At this exact moment in my past life, I had just woken up, disheveled and disgraced, in Lorien Song's bed, facing a room full of scornful glares. The architect of my ruin, my brother, stood there feigning shock. "Let's go," I said, rising from my seat. "It is time to watch the grand show I have prepared for my dear brother." The main house of the north courtyard was already surrounded by servants, their whisperings buzzing like a nest of disturbed hornets. I arrived just in time to see Ronan Jang grabbing Lorien by the collar, his face purple with rage. "How dare you lay a hand on my sister?" he roared, his voice echoing in the tense silence. My nails dug into my palms, the sharp sting grounding me. Even now, with his plans in chaos, his first thought was of her, his precious Lyra. Pushing through the throng, I entered the room. It was in complete disarray. Lorien sat gloomily by the bed, his inner robe gaping open, revealing a well-muscled chest. And weeping on the couch, dressed in a replica of my own nightgown, was none other than Priya. "Brother, what are you two arguing about so early in the morning?" I leaned lazily against the doorframe, my voice deliberately soft and drowsy. 2 pairs of eyes shot in my direction. Ronan's expression was a masterpiece of conflicting emotions, shock, astonishment, and a rising tide of panic. As for Lorien, those perpetually aloof eyes, cold as a winter lake, fixed on me with a deadly intensity. His gaze then slowly shifted to the weeping Priya on the bed. His voice was ice. "Who are you?"
Priya raised her tear-streaked face, as lovely as a pear blossom in the rain. Lord Song, you drank too much last night and grabbed this servant. I couldn't break free." "Is that so?" Lorien's gaze turned terrifyingly dark. "This can't be." Ronan's face turned ashen as he realized the woman in the bed was his own maid. "But I clearly—" He stopped abruptly, casting a terrified glance in my direction. I walked slowly to the table and poured myself a cup of tea, the jade bracelet on my wrist tinkling with a delicate, mocking sound. "Shirin," Ronan forced a calm tone, his voice gentle. "Where were you last night?" I met his gaze, my smile a mask of pure innocence. "I was in my room all night, of course. But brother, didn't you promise to admire the moon with me? How did you end up getting drunk first?" Lorien, ever keen, noticed the strange dance of gazes between my brother and me. His eyes darted back and forth before finally settling on my neck, where a faint red mark peeked from beneath my scarf. His pupils constricted. A jade pendant crashed at Ronan's feet, the crisp, shattering sound making Priya jump. The pendant Ronan kept close to his heart. "Ronan Jong," Lorien enunciated each word with chilling deliberation. "You are truly a master schemer." I lowered my head, hiding the triumphant smile that spread across my face. How utterly entertaining, watching the dogs turn on each other. "No, this isn't." Ronan frantically tried to gather the broken pieces of jade. Suddenly, he pointed a shaking finger at Priya. "It's her! This wretched maid must have stolen my pendant." Priya's face turned deathly pale. "Young master, it was clearly you who ordered this servant." "Silence!" Ronan slapped her hard across the face, cutting off her words. I watched the farce with cold satisfaction. In my past life, Ronan had personally forced Priya to drink poison to ensure her silence. Seeing her turn on him now was a delicious appetizer. Lorien rose leisurely, his black robe sweeping across the floor. He walked up to me, the lingering scent of last night's alcohol clinging to him. "Miss Jong," he leaned in, his warm breath brushing against the mark on my neck as he whispered, "I truly underestimated you." I raised my eyes to meet his, seeing my own composed smile reflected in his dark pupils. "What are you talking about, young Master Song?" I blinked, feigning faint confusion. "Sara doesn't understand." He let out a short, cold laugh and stormed away. Ronan chased after him for a few steps before whirling back to grab my wrist, his fingers digging into my skin. "It was you, wasn't it? You tampered with Priya." Priya's face turned deathly pale. "Young master, it was clearly you who ordered this servant." "Silence!" Ronan flapped her hard across the face, cutting off her words. I watched the farce with cold satisfaction. In my past life, Ronan had personally forced Priya to drink poison to ensure her silence. Seeing her turn on him now was a delicious appetizer. Lorien rose leisurely, his black robe sweeping across the floor. He walked up to me, the lingering scent of last night's alcohol clinging to him. "Miss Jong," he leaned in, his warm breath brushing against the mark on my neck as he whispered, "I truly underestimated you." I raised my eyes to meet his, seeing my own composed smile reflected in his dark pupils. "What are you talking about, young Master Song?" I blinked, feigning faint confusion. "Sara doesn't understand." He let out a short, cold laugh and stormed away. Ronan chased after him for a few steps before whirling back to grab my wrist, his fingers digging into my skin. "It was you, wasn't it? You tampered with Priya." Brother, I gently withdrew my hand and smoothed the wrinkles on his collar. You should be thinking about how to explain to Father why your personal jade pendant ended up in Prius embrace. Watching his face drain of all color, I leaned close to his ear and whispered, and also, how you will explain it to your beloved Lyra. As I turned to leave, Ronan's hand shot out again, his eyes narrowing. Sarah, he said, his voice deceptively cheerful, what are those marks on your neck? The room fell silent. I flushed, hastily covering my neck with my hand. A mosquito bit me last night. His eyes darkened. He was about to press further when the butler rushed in. Young Master Qin is here. My heart skipped a beat. Jake Qin. What was he doing here? Could he possibly know? In the front hall, Jake was clad in a deep crimson brocade robe, idly toying with a single crabapple blossom earring. My earring. Noticing our entrance, he raised his phoenix-like eyes, a charming, unrestrained smile playing on his lips. Miss Zhang, I wonder if you recognize this. Panic flared in my chest, but I quickly suppressed it. I picked up a teacup, took a delicate sip, and looked him straight in the eye. I do not know him. Oh, my apologies for the disturbance. Jake stood up gracefully, but as he reached the doorway, he turned back. His gaze swept meaningfully over my neck. If Miss Zhang happens to remember anything, you are always welcome to visit the Qin residence. When that crimson figure finally disappeared, Ronan seized my wrist again, his grip like iron. Little sister, he hissed, what remarkable skills you have. I shook him off, my expression glacial. What are you talking about, brother? Your sister doesn't understand a thing. Chapter 4, A Marriage of Thorns. The spring banquet of Silverwood City was a tapestry of falling petals and whispered pleasantries. I leaned against a vermilion pillar, a cold observer, watching as Lyra Lynn made her entrance. She was a vision in a plain white gauze dress, a single magnolia hairpin in her dark hair, as ethereal as a fairy from a painting. Men, so predictable. In my past life, by the time Lyra had returned, Lorien had already been shackled to me in marriage. She had stood outside the wedding hall, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears as she'd whispered, wishing you a lifetime of happiness, before turning away to fall ill for 3 long months. Her pain only served to deepen Lorien's hatred for me. But in this life, things would be different. Lyra, how did you... Lorien reached for a stray petal in her hair, but she flinched away, a small, almost imperceptible movement that froze him in place. Brother Lorien, she said, her affectionate eyes filling with tears as she gazed at him. Lorien, I never wrote to you. I heard the moment I entered the city, Lyra interrupted, her voice breaking with heartbreak, that you slept with Ronan's personal maid. A collective gasp rippled through the garden. She lowered her head, then raised it again, her tears falling like perfectly timed hammer blows upon the hearts of every man present. She was not just Silverwood's most beautiful maiden, but the most celebrated poetess, south of the Serpentine River. Her pain was a public spectacle, and every man there longed to be her champion. With all the players on the stage, the performance could truly begin. Lorien pulled Lyra toward the edge of the lotus pond. Brother Lorien, you're hurting me, she cried, trying to break free. Lyra, let me explain, he pleaded, instinctively releasing her. She took a half-step back, a small retreat that felt like a chasm opening between them. And then, in a move of calculated despair, she threw herself into Ronan's arms, weeping pitifully. Brother Ronan, is what they said really true? Ronan patted her back gently, his expression tender, while casting a triumphant, provocative glance over her shoulder at Lorien. Lorien's face had darkened to a thunderous shade. How utterly splendid. I took a slow sip of peach blossom wine, a smile hidden in the depths of my cup. The handwritten letter from Lorien was, of course, my masterpiece. I had spent 3 nights meticulously copying his elegant script. In my past life, I had copied his calligraphy for half a year, hoping to earn even a shred of his favor,
only to be met with his cold, cutting words. "You will never compare to Lyra." "Are you enjoying the show, Sarah?" Jake's lazy voice materialized beside me. He had appeared behind me unnoticed, his crimson robe brushing against my wrist. His warm breath, carrying the scent of pine and wine, grazed my ear. I stiffened, forcing a mask of composure. "What are you talking about, young Master Qin? I don't understand." Imitating Lorien's handwriting to recall Lyra ahead of schedule. Having the white moonlight witness her beloved's betrayal firsthand. Now that's truly adding insult to injury. My heart hammered against my ribs. How could he possibly know? A cold thought flashed through my mind. Should I just kill him? But then I reconsidered. His skills were formidable, far better than Lorien's. And besides, I felt a strange reluctance to let him go. "What are you thinking about?" Jake sensed my turmoil. He gripped my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. I brushed his hand away, a sly smile finally curling my lips as I crooked a finger at him. He leaned down until our noses were almost touching. "Young Master Qin," I said provocatively, "this reputation of yours as a wastrel has fooled everyone." "Likewise," he murmured, his eyes glinting. "They all say the legitimate daughter of House Zhang is virtuous and exemplary, a model for all women. But seeing you today—"
In my past life, those words, virtuous and exemplary, had been the heavy shackles that bound me. Because of them, I endured Lorien's coldness, Lyra's manipulations, and helped him take concubine after concubine into my own home. In this life, I would be no one's model. I would be a wantonly reckless enchantress. I raised an eyebrow. "Well?" Before I could finish, he kissed me. It was forceful, demanding, a kiss that stole all thought. I raised my hand to strike him, but he caught my wrist easily. Furious, I bit his lip, hard. He winced, but didn't retreat, instead deepening the kiss, his eyes full of teasing, indulgent amusement. He was enjoying this contest. My breath grew ragged, my legs weak. In the background, I could hear Lyra's soft sobs and Ronan's deep, comforting murmurs. As the kiss ended, I collapsed against his chest. He chuckled, a low vibration against my ear, his fingers mischievously pinching my waist to steady me. "Want something more exciting?" he whispered. Before I could answer, I saw his fingers flick. A small stone shot through the air, hitting Lyra's knee with perfect, unseen precision. Her legs gave way, and she plunged headlong into the pond. "Lyra!" Ronan's face went white, and he leaped into the water without a second thought. Lorien rushed forward, but Ronan was closer. He scooped her up, her soaked dress clinging to her body, outlining every curve in a way that was both scandalous and intimate. The crowd erupted in a buzz of gossip. Heavens, it's young Master Zhang carrying Miss Lin. Such intimate contact, doesn't that mean? But weren't young Master Song and Miss Lin deeply in love? Lyra's face was ashen, her body trembling, as Ronan carried her ashore against her will. Lorien stood dripping on the bank, his expression a mask of terrifying fury. I turned to Jake, only to find him watching me with an unsettling half-smile, his gaze terrifyingly profound. Had he done that on purpose? Did he know my plan? Could he have been reborn as well? The thought was a jolt of ice in my veins. Impossible. I suppressed the doubt and flashed him a radiant smile. "Mr. Qin, I am quite satisfied with your skills." With that, I turned and walked away, unaware of the fleeting, unreadable shadow that passed through his eyes. Ronan Zhang and Lyra Lin's wedding was a hastily arranged yet extravagantly lavish affair. The son-in-law her father had favored was Lorien, but now, faced with a compromised daughter, he had no choice but to accept Ronan of the declining yet still aristocratic House Zhang. When Lorien arrived, a hush fell over the wedding hall. He was dressed in plain white, a stark specter of grief against the overwhelming sea of celebratory red. Lyra, hidden beneath her bridal veil, halted her steps as she was being led over the ceremonial fire basin. Through the swaying beaded curtain, their gazes locked.
Her tears fell instantly, splashing onto the fine embroidery of her gown like ink on silk. "Lyra," Lorien began, taking a step forward, only to be blocked by Ronan's imposing figure. "Lorien," Ronan said, his fingers turning white as they gripped his wine cup. "Today is my joyous occasion. Let me toast you." My parents' faces were grim masks in the main hall. I had to dig my nails into my palms to keep from laughing aloud. "Sarah, as the legitimate daughter of House Zhang, you must be virtuous and gentle," my father's words from my past life echoed in my ears. The same father who had scolded me when Lyra deliberately scalded my hand. The same father who had refused to see me when I begged for rescue from the living hell of the Song household, saying, "A married daughter is like spilled water. Don't come back and disgrace us." Now, that same father stiffly accepted the congratulations of his guests, the veins at his temples throbbing. Ronan, his face ashen, dragged a resistant Lyra through the ceremony. The red silk ribbon connecting them was pulled taut, a perfect metaphor for their union. How exhilarating! I threw my head back and drained my cup. "Lyra," I thought, a cold smile touching my lips. "This is only the beginning." The news spread through the Zhang estate like wildfire. On their wedding night, Ronan had struck Lyra. He had wanted to consummate the marriage, but she had refused, scratching his face in her struggles. He had slapped her so hard she hit the corner of the bed, a huge bruise swelling on her forehead. When she came to serve the morning tea, the bruise was still visible, a ugly mar on her perfect skin. She knelt, offering the tea to my parents. My father accepted with a cold grunt. My mother, however, remained silent, letting her kneel. Finally, she took a thick booklet from a matron and threw it in front of Lyra. "House Zhang rules, the chapter on women's virtues," my mother said, her voice devoid of warmth. "Since you have entered our family, you must abide by our rules. Study it. I will test you in 3 days." Lyra's fingertips trembled as she accepted the book. She forced a smile at me. "Sarah, little sister, this is your sister-in-law's greeting gift." She offered a delicate jade bracelet. I reached out, my fingertips brushing against it for a fleeting second before I let it drop. The bracelet shattered on the stone floor. "Oh no!" I exclaimed, my eyes instantly filling with tears. "If you didn't want to give it to me, sister-in-law, you could have just said so. Why do this? You'll make everyone think I am unhappy about you marrying my brother." Lyra's face contorted with rage. "You—" The gazes of everyone in the hall became daggers aimed at her. She could no longer hold back. "Sarah Zhang, it was clearly you who did it on purpose." I shrank back, twisting my handkerchief. "Sister-in-law, please don't be angry. It's all my fault." "Lyra," Ronan tried to stop her, but it was too late. My father slammed his hand on the cable. "Madam Lin, is this how you were raised? Throwing a tantrum in front of your elders?" "Apologize to father at once," Ronan hissed, forcing her to kneel. My mother gave her a cold glance. "Copy the family rules 100 times. Bring them to me tomorrow." By noon, the whole household was gossiping. The new mistress was arrogant, disrespectful, and cruel to her sister-in-law. Listening from a pavilion, I leisurely sipped my tea. In the distance, Lyra stood alone, clutching the book of rules, a solitary, broken figure. This, I thought, was not even 1/10,000th of the pain I had endured. Chapter 5. Echoes of the Past. Lorien had left for the capital. I stood atop the city tower, watching his departing carriage shrink to a speck on the horizon. My fingertips dug into the cold stone of the parapet. In my past life, he had become the top scholar in this very imperial examination, and the calamity that would exterminate my family was fast approaching. Life in the Zhang household descended into a quiet, simmering hell for Lyra. My mother tormented her relentlessly. She was forced to attend to morning ablutions before dawn, punished with kneeling for hours if a meal was slightly displeasing, and at night she endured Ronan's drunken humiliations. "Lyra, who are you trying to fool with your false purity?" he would sneer. "That day at the pond, everyone saw everything." In just a month, the vibrant bloom of Lyra Lin had withered. The eyes that had once enchanted all the young men of Silverwood now held only a venomous glint. As for me, I flourished. I attended poetry gatherings and flower viewing banquets. Even my mother remarked on it. Sarah has been looking rather well lately. I would smile faintly, catching sight of Lyra's hand clutching her handkerchief so tightly her knuckles were white. Did it hurt? Good. In my first life, Lorien had remained chaste for Lyra, never once touching me after our forced marriage. Seeing my belly remain flat, his mother, Madame Song, would sneer daily. A hen that can't lay eggs, just taking up space. Desperate, I had tried to become a pale imitation of Lyra. I wore moon-white gauze dresses and magnolia hairpins. I changed my incense to her favorite scent of cedar. One night, I brought ginseng soup to his study. "Husband, it is late." He looked up, and his gaze turned bone-chilling. "A poor imitation of the beautiful," he spat, smashing the bowl. Scalding soup splashed across the back of my hand, leaving an angry red welt. "Take it off." "What?" I froze. "Take off that dress," he hissed, advancing on me, his eyes filled with disgust. "How dare you try to imitate her?" He grabbed my collar. Rip! The fragile gauze tore open. "Lorien," I clutched frantically at my ruined clothes. "Have you lost your mind?" "Lost my mind?" he sneered, his fingers gripping my throat. "If you hadn't schemed against me, why would I have married you? And why would Lyra have married your worthless brother? Take it off." He tore at my clothes with brute force until I was driven from his study in nothing but a thin sleeping robe, my hairpins scattered, my feet bare. I walked the long, cold gallery while servants snickered and matrons pointed. "Look, the madam has been thrown out again." The news spread through Silverwood like a disease. Madame Song, shamelessly attempting to seduce her husband, had been driven from his chambers in disgrace. The memory was a shard of ice in my heart. Late one night, Jake Qin climbed through my window again, reeking of wine as he pinned me down on the bed. "Guess who I saw today at the Gilded Flagon?" I pushed at his chest, feigning nonchalance. "Who?" He nibbled my earlobe. "Your dear brother was dining with a woman." A flicker of satisfaction went through me. In my past life, Ronan had been devoted to Lyra, never taking a concubine. But this time, I had made sure a certain young woman crossed his path. A woman who, in every aspect, bore an uncanny resemblance to the Lyra he had first fallen in love with, before marriage had turned her into a bitter shrew. The white moonlight had finally become frost on the ground. Pleased with myself, I allowed Jake to take the lead. He started coming to my chamber every night. Sometimes he brought news from the city. Other times he said nothing at all, simply holding me close until dawn broke. "Sarah Zhang," he gripped my wrist one night, his breath scorching against my skin. "When do you plan to give me a proper status?" I chuckled lightly, my voice a silken tease. "I've never thought about it." He paused. "If you're unwilling," I provoked him deliberately, "I can always find someone else." Before the words had fully left my lips, he had rolled off the bed, grabbed his outer robe, and vanished into the night without a single backward glance. That departure lasted for half a month. I told myself I didn't care. But whenever night fell and silence reigned, the sound of the wind rattling the window would make me look up, hoping to see a flash of crimson. The familiar robe never appeared. I crushed the feeling mercilessly. I had more important things to do. Lorien's song was about to become the top scholar, and the annihilation of my family was imminent. Lyra was dead. The news arrived as I was drawing my eyebrows. Karis burst in, her face ashen. "Miss, the young mistress, she has passed." "Oh, how did she die?" I asked, my hand steady as I perfected the arch of my brow. "They say she argued with the young master and hit her head on the corner of a table." I slowly, deliberately curved my lips into a smile, just as I had planned. Last night, Jake had sent a message. Lyra had discovered the woman Ronan was keeping and had personally led people to her door, beating the girl half to death. When Ronan returned, they had erupted into a vicious argument. "Do you still think you're the high and mighty Lyra Lynn?" he had roared. "Ronan Zhang, how did you beg to marry me back then?" she had shrieked. "Had I known, I never would have married you. You will never compare to Brother Lorien." In his rage, Ronan shoved her. She slammed heavily against the sharp corner of a pearwood table. Blood splattered across the floor. My dear brother, my cruel, selfish brother, didn't even glance back as he turned and walked away. By the time a maid found her, her body was cold. In her past life, Lyra died in sorrow, the eternal white moonlight in two men's hearts. When she passed, Lorien held her lifeless body and said to me, "Sarah Zhang, you owe her for this." Ronan beat me half to death in his grief. Now, her body was hastily collected, the mourning hall set up perfunctorily. The official story was death from a sudden illness. After all, everyone knew Lyra had always been frail. The truth, like the maidservant who witnessed it, was quickly buried. Perfect, indeed. I stood beneath the corridor, leisurely cracking melon seeds, listening to the hollow sounds of mourning. Chapter 6. Ashes and Accusations. Just as before, the news that Lorien Song had achieved the top honors in the imperial examinations reached Silverwood. Overnight, the modest Song household became the center of bustling activity. But I knew the venom that lay beneath his mother's kindly facade. In my past life, she had drugged Lorien and sent her own niece to his bed, then calmly blamed me for the arrangement. Lorien, in his fury, had forced me to drink an aphrodisiac, humiliating me in front of the entire household. This time, I would drive a wedge between the filial son and his doting mother. I had people spread a carefully crafted rumor. The eldest daughter of the powerful House Wang was gentle, virtuous, and destined to bring prosperity to her husband, a perfect match for a new top scholar. It took less than a day. Madame Song, eager to secure a powerful alliance, sent a matchmaker with lavish gifts to the Wang residence. The marriage was swiftly arranged. Lorien, I thought, watching from a tea house across the street, let's see how you enjoy a marriage arranged by your beloved mother. 1 month later, Lorien returned to Silverwood in glory. Clad in crimson official robes, he rode a towering steed, a banished immortal returned to the mortal realm. But upon entering his home, he learned that his marriage had been decided. "Mother, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his face a thundercloud in the main hall. "The Wang family's daughter is dignified and virtuous, a perfect match," Madame Song beamed, holding out the betrothal card. "I will not marry her." "Nonsense," she slammed the table. "Marriage is decided by parental orders." Lorien let out a cold laugh, his gaze sweeping over the room full of betrothal gifts. "Do you really think this can force me to submit?" That night, there was a light tap on my window. Jake flipped inside, his crimson robes stirring the still air. "Miss Zhang seems quite at leisure these days," he said, his lips curved in a smile as he reclined on my daybed. I continued to comb my long hair, not turning to face him. He chuckled softly and came up behind me, embracing me, his chin resting on my shoulder. "You heartless little thing," he murmured, his fingers tapping my nose. "I am completely at your mercy now." Then his tone shifted. "Lorien sent people to investigate House Wang." He twirled a strand of my hair. I met his gaze in the bronze mirror and shook my head. "Let him investigate." "Aren't you afraid he'll find out you're the one who started the rumors?" My crimson lips curved. So what if he does? Would he dare break off the engagement? The eldest daughter of House Wang is the Emperor's most favored consort's cousin. Would Lorien Song dare gamble his entire official career on spite? Jake's eyes darkened. He turned me to face him, his thumb brushing my lips. "You are even more ruthless than I imagined." I bit his finger lightly. What, scared now? He seized my wrist and pressed me down into the embroidered quilt, his breath scorching. Scared? I like it even more. Late that night, the Zhang residence was engulfed in flames. I stood in the shadows of the garden, watching coldly as bandits smashed through the main gates, their blades glinting in the firelight. Screams tore through the night sky. The timing was different from my past life, but the slaughter was the same. Only this time, I was ready. I waited a quarter of an hour, a precise, calculated delay, before leading my loyal men to storm the main courtyard. My father lay in a pool of blood, his right foot severed at the ankle. My mother, huddled in a corner, her eyes vacant, murmuring Ronan's name over and over. And my dear brother, Ronan Zhang, lay with his throat slit wide open, terror frozen in his wide, staring eyes, the very same death he had suffered before. Just as the chaos reached its peak, Jake vaulted over the wall. "Another gang of bandits has kidnapped the Wang family's daughter," he said, his voice urgent. I swung onto my horse, a cold smile on my lips. After them. The icy wind lashed at my cheeks as we rode, but it couldn't quell the memories. In my past life, Lorien had forced me to learn to ride. "All the noble ladies in the capital can ride and shoot," he'd said, watching coldly as I fell again and again. "You would only shame me." I had gritted my teeth, my thighs rubbed raw, until I finally learned. Now, that painful skill was my weapon. Jake rode beside me, his crimson robes a ghostly banner in the moonlight. "You knew something would happen tonight," he stated, not a question. "A guess," I replied, cracking my whip. "Bandits always target wealthy households, don't they?" Outside the mountain stronghold, flames lit the sky. "The northeast corner," I pointed. "That's their weakest point."
Jake's eyes flickered, but he asked nothing. He relayed the information, and the soldiers broke through with ease. Inside, we found a strange scene. A breathtakingly beautiful woman in red reclined on a tiger-skin chair, lazily twirling a strand of the terrified Wang daughter's hair. Music played. "Oh," she purred, "you've arrived so quickly." So this was Scarlet, the female bandit who had captured Lorien's heart in our past life. He had been captured by her on his way to the capital. She had fallen for him instantly, but he, still devoted to Lyra, had refused her. It was only after Lyra's death, when he was consumed by a burning hatred for my family, that he agreed to Scarlet's terms. "Destroy House Jiang for me, and I am yours." On the night of the massacre, he had stood in a pool of our family's blood and realized she was the only one who understood the darkness in his soul. But he could never marry a wanted criminal. So he had schemed, arranging for her to save a royal princess, thereby cleansing her reputation and allowing him to marry her. But in this lifetime, thanks to me, Scarlet had appeared too early, and Lorien Song had lost his chance at a legitimate life. "Scarlet has escaped from prison," the news reached me as I was sipping tea. It seemed no cage could hold her. Furious at the abduction of his daughter and the subsequent broken engagement, Minister Wang openly impeached Lorien Song in court, and on the very afternoon the engagement was officially nullified, Lorien arrived at the Jiang family's doorstep with betrothal gifts. I sat in the main seat of the hall, my father too injured to preside, and watched him enter. "Sarah," he said, his voice cool and detached, "I come today to propose marriage." A gasp echoed through the hall. I leisurely set down my teacup. "Lord Song, have you forgotten? My brother's body is barely cold. Your beloved Lyra has just died, and here you are, rushing to marry me?" His eyes darkened. "Guards," I slammed the table, "throw this trash out." The servants swarmed forward, tossing the silks and jewels into the street. "Sarah Jiang," he bit out, his fists clenched, "you will regret this." I sneered. "Lorien, who in the hells do you think you are? Make me regret it." Chapter 7. The General's Son. Lorien fled Silverwood to take up a minor post far from the capital, his reputation in tatters. A month later, Jake and I arrived in the capital city. Just as in my past life, assassins ambushed Princess Aurelia's ceremonial procession as it returned from the temples. But this time, it was not Scarlet who would save her. At the critical moment, Jake and I charged out on horseback. He deflected the volley of arrows while I pulled the princess to safety. The scheme Lorien had once used to redeem his bandit lover, I now used to destroy him completely. A secret letter, written in a script identical to Lorien's official memorials, was found on an assassin's corpse. I, of course, had been the one to plant it there.
The emperor was furious. An edict was issued for Lorien Song's immediate arrest. But when the imperial guards stormed his remote residence, they found only a still warm cup of tea. He was gone. It was only upon our arrival in the capital that I finally learned the truth of Jake Qin. He was no mere playboy. He was the youngest son of the general of the Azure Guard, the imperial nephew of the current empress. His family had sent him to Silverwood to lie low after he had publicly thrashed the third prince in the street. Standing before the imposing gates of the general's mansion, my hands clenched in my sleeves. What was I, the daughter of a destitute and ruined house, to a family of such military and political power? Yet, the moment my name card was presented, a string of firecrackers erupted from within the estate. The old general himself strode out, his steps vigorous, and slapped Jake so hard he staggered. "You rascal! You finally managed to trick a wife into coming home." He then turned to me, his weathered face creased with a wide smile. "Don't be scared, girl. This troublemaker is notorious in the capital. Women cross the street to avoid him." Madame Qin, wiping tears of joy from her eyes, slipped a heavy jade bracelet onto my wrist. "Buddha be praised," she wept. "This little demon king is finally getting buried off. No, wait, finally someone is willing to take this demon king off our hands." Later, in a tea house, I listened to a storyteller recount Jake's youthful exploits. At 7, he burned down the Imperial Academy. At 10, he beat an emissary until he cried. At 15, he broke the third prince's ribs over a singing girl. Jake kicked over the tea table in disgust. That bastard was harassing a commoner. The tea house emptied in an instant, and I finally understood. It wasn't that the Qin family looked down on me. It was that no one else in the empire dared to marry him except me. Chapter 8, The Final Arrow. The idle prince rebelled. His troops pressed against the strategic city of Oakhaven. House Qin was ordered to march, and I, now betrothed to Jake, followed with the army. In my past life, Lorien had taken me to the battlefield. On the eve of his victory, I was captured by rebels, and he had looked at me from across the field, drew his bow, and personally shot an arrow through my heart. "Sarah Jang," he had said, his voice carrying on the wind, "as long as you live, I cannot marry Scarlet with a grand wedding procession." But in this life, I would make him pay in blood. Scouts reported that Lorien Song had become a key advisor to the idle prince. Scarlet was by his side, a fearsome commander. In the previous life, Lorien was the hero who quelled the chaos. In this one, he had become the rebel. The irony was so bitter it was almost sweet. At the foot of Oakhaven City, the Qin army was an unstoppable force. The rebel troops retreated in disarray. Standing atop the city wall, I watched the fleeing enemy, my gaze cold and searching. And then I saw him. Lorien Song. His blood-stained white robes stood out starkly amidst the chaos. He looked up, and his gaze locked onto mine like a venomous serpent. A twisted, horrifying smile curled his lips. "Sarah, Jang," he shouted, his voice piercing through the din of the battlefield. "Do you think you've won, you idiot?" I slowly, deliberately raised the bow in my hand. I nocked an arrow. I drew the string taut, just as he had done to me in our past life. The motion felt like coming home. The arrow split the air with a righteous whistle. Lorien's pupils constricted, his face contorted with an expression of horrified disbelief. So he could feel fear after all. So he could feel pain after all. The moment the arrowhead pierced his heart, his expression froze, a mask of shock and betrayal. Scarlet broke through the chaos and caught his falling body. She looked up at me, and her eyes held no hatred, only a strange, weary relief. Then, without hesitation, she drew her dagger and plunged it into her own heart, choosing to follow him in death. What a foolish, devoted woman. Jake came to stand beside me, his hand silently grasping mine. "It's over," he said softly. I gazed at the two bodies far below, and suddenly laughed, a raw, broken sound. Yes, I whispered, the wind whipping the tears from my eyes. It's over. My hatred, my obsession, my past life, all of it vanished like smoke with that single, beautiful arrow. Epilogue: The Merchant Queen. On the day the army returned victorious to the capital, the first snow of winter began to fall. Jake waited for me at the end of the long street, the brightly decorated gates of the Qin family residence glowing behind him. "Sarah Jang," he smiled, extending his hand. "Welcome home." I gripped his hand, our fingers lacing together, and stepped with him into the swirling snow. For a moment, I saw a future there, a life of comfort and nobility, but it was not my own. I did not stay in the capital. After the rebellion was quelled, I returned to Silverwood, taking with me the loyal old guard of the Jang family. In this life, I refused to be anyone's wife, anyone's pawn. I would be the master of House Jang, the ruler of my own destiny. Within 2 years, the banners of the Jang trading house flew across the land. Silk, tea, salt, iron, shipping, my business reached from the western regions to the southern seas. The accounting skills I had learned to please Lorian's song now made me the wealthiest woman in the empire. The equestrian and archery skills I had practiced to survive on the battlefield now protected me through treacherous mountain passes and valleys. Every spring and autumn, I personally escorted supplies to the frontier. The soldiers of the Qin army would greet me with wide smiles, their voices ringing out, "Chief Jang."
On the 5th year, at the start of spring, Jake Qin took off his general's armor and rode alone to Silverwood. He barged into my accounting room and slammed the tiger tally, the symbol of his military command, onto my table. "Sarah Jang, I am done being a general." I kept clicking the beads of my abacus, not looking up. "Oh, so what do you wish to do?" He snatched my account book away and leaned in close, his familiar, mischievous smile making my heart skip a beat. "I wish to be your husband." 3 days later, Silverwood City was adorned with lanterns and crimson decorations. The celebration was not for Miss Jang marrying into a powerful military family, but for Chief Jang taking the son of General Qin as her groom. The bridal sedan, a symbol of a woman joining her husband's house, was replaced by a groom's procession to my own gates, drawing crowds from all over the city to watch the unprecedented spectacle. Dressed in crimson robes, Jake sat astride his horse, sneering at the young women tossing handkerchiefs his way. "What are you staring at? Have you never seen a man get married off before?" He was as gloriously unrestrained as the day we first met. The following year, our son, Anand, was born. Jake was so overjoyed, he danced around for 3 days and nights trying to think of a name. 5 years after that, our merchant fleet discovered a new, uncharted island across the Great Sea. My life was no longer a story of revenge. It was a journey just beginning.